The final game of Wild Card Weekend was supposed to be a home playoff game for the Rams as they took on the Minnesota Vikings. But due to the catastrophic fires currently raging in Southern California, this game has been moved to Arizona. Both teams are keeping the thoughts and prayers of the people in Southern California on their minds as they prepare to play this game tonight. And we will do our job getting you set for the things you need to know about the final game of Wild Card Weekend and break down everything you need to know for the divisional round. It is all ahead on the Pregame PowerUp, and it starts right now. So here's how the playoff bracket looks after the action over the weekend. Every round 2 matchup has been decided except for who will be heading to Philadelphia to face the Eagles. It'll be one of these two teams tonight, whether it will be the Rams or the Vikings. We're about to find out, and that game will be played next Sunday evening. Hi, everybody, and glad you're with us on the Pregame PowerUp here on DraftKings Network. Trey, Wingo here with Claudia, Bellafotto. We will be joined by Emerson Latzia. Marshall Newhouse will join us. Obviously, we'll get into everything that we need to do with the game, but clearly those fires impacting so much of Los Angeles County really sort of overshadow everything we're talking about here today.
Yeah, of course. It's not just for Rams players. It's certainly heavy on all minds. When we're looking at the number for this game, though, we just showed it that it's currently at 2.5. That is where it opened. The Vikings were the 2.5-point favorite. In a situation like this, it's tough for odds makers. So what they did was they brought the Rams to a 0.5-point favorite, about a pick 'em 5 days ago, in anticipation that that Rams money was going to come in. And then we saw this change in where they're going to be playing. First time in 80 years this is happening due to the fire as well. Got back to 2.5, up to 3 at one point, which is that key number, but settled again back down to that 2.5.
And again, this was supposed to be a home game for the Rams. Home teams have won 4 of the 5 wild card games so far. But again, this is now a neutral site game because the NFL made the decision on Thursday to move this game out of LA and over to State Farm Stadium in Arizona, Glendale specifically, due to poor air quality and just everything else that was going on. The NFL said the decision was in, quote, the best interest of public safety. So the Rams travel to Arizona Friday night on the Cardinals team planes, and the game goes on, but not without many, many heavy hearts knowing what they're leaving behind in Los Angeles.
You know, we're the Los Angeles Rams. You know, we play for the people in this community, the people that support us, and this week will be, another example of that, obviously. And, it's I'm sure, hopefully, a great escape for people who've been going through a lot of tough times.
Well, I think, you realize the perspective. And, you hate for situations like this to arise. There was something similar that we've been a part of in 2018 with LA together. And you talk about really what sports represents is an opportunity for people to come together, provide a temporary sense of relief from some of the things that they're going through. And I am excited about the opportunity for our team to go compete where people can be proud and have a team that I think, represents a lot of the things that are right about sports. And I know we're going to prepare to the best of our ability to do that.
And obviously, with so many things going on, it will hopefully give a little bit of a respite for everybody in the Southern California area that have been devastated by so many real-life things. Maybe if they have a chance to sit down somewhere in front of a television and just watch their favorite team play, it'll give them some momentary satisfaction from the reality they're facing day in and day out.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of these unfortunate situations happen. You see the Boston Strong, the Vegas Strong, and it's usually the sports that do bring people together. So that is good to see here.
Exactly right. So that's the Rams side of the story. And then there's the really interesting side of this story from a football perspective, and that's what this Minnesota Vikings team is bringing into this wild card game. We're talking about historic numbers that we've never seen before from a team with this many wins and how successful they were in the regular season. The Vikings really only lost to 2 teams all season long. Detroit beat them twice, and then the Rams beat them back in Week 8, 30-20 on a Sunday night game. Now, the story of that game, besides an obvious missed face mask call in the end zone by the Rams that would have given them a safety and the Vikings had a chance to win that game, was the return of both wideouts Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp for LA. After missing most of the season, to that point, Stafford had his star wide receivers back and threw for 275 yards and 4 scores in the win. And since that point, the Rams won 7 of their last 10 games to win the NFC West and earn the playoff spot and the home game that goes with winning your division. Both of these teams have been excellent, though, since that meeting back in Week 8. The Vikings, after that loss, which was the second of 2 in a row, ripped off 9 in a row, and the only other time they lost was when the division for them was on the line, Week 18 in Detroit. They lost that to the Lions. The Rams became the first team in NFL history to make the playoffs after being 3 or more games below 500 in back-to-back seasons. The numbers fairly similar across the board in points and yards for these two clubs. Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell knows both teams can learn a lot from their matchup earlier this season and apply it into the game tonight.
We know they're going to be doing things to try to take away, some of the inventory that we put on tape over the course of the season. But I thought Sam, like I said, got off to a really good start in the game. We had a little bit of, had some pre-snap issues with, for a variety of reasons, that created a little bit of a pause and a lull in our flow, and they were able to capitalize and. Defensively had some chances to get off the field in the second quarter that would have maybe gave us an opportunity. I think there was 2 or 3 penalties on one long drive, and they were able to kind of put us in a position where after losing CD, we were, up against it a little bit, but no excuse. They beat us and won the football game. We got to go try to play a little bit better, more consistent for longer and see what that looks like.
Well, if you go by the record, Minnesota might be the best wild card team ever. They were the first 14-win team to play a road playoff game before the conference championship round, and they are the first team in NFL history with 14 or more wins to be a wild card team. No 14-win team has ever finished second in their own division. 14 wins is also tied for the most by a team that did not earn the number 1 seed in the conference since seeding began in 1975. And Sam Darnold will be making his first career playoff start, but it's Stafford's 9th, and he's an even 4-4 heading into this game, which brings us to our first in trend. So even straight up against the spread in the playoffs, a perfect 3-0 though, straight up and against the spread, a neutral site or at home, all of those wins with the Rams, and 4 wins as a dog this season. That is the most since 2016. Now he has also gone one and done in all but one of his prior playoff appearances, and you know what happened in that one game? He went to the Super Bowl in 2022 against the Bengals. Now Stafford has never won a playoff game with Detroit. He went 0-3, all 4 wins coming with the Rams during that Super Bowl run. He has put up numbers in these games though. Stafford, the all-time leader in passing yards per game in the playoffs, and one of 3 players to average more than 300 pass yards per game in the postseason. His 1-4 record in this round though is 1 loss away from tying Ben Roethlisberger for the most wildcard losses by a quarterback all time. And with the quarterback turning 37 2 days before Super Bowl Sunday, he's embracing every last opportunity he's got.
The biggest thing for me is embrace these opportunities, right? I mean, I spent 12 years in Detroit. We went to the playoffs 3 different times. That's it. And, I've been lucky enough to go 3 out of the 4 years that I've been here. And, I cherish those things. I cherish those opportunities because I know how tough they are to get. Each season has its own story on how you get there. Some a little more smooth sailing than others. Obviously, this one was a tough start. And the way we battled back as a team and as a group is something I'm really proud of, and obviously put ourselves in position to be where we want to be.
Now, Stafford did win his last 3 starts of the season, but there's some reason for concern when you look at the numbers he put up. 3 straight wins with under 200 passing yards. That's the longest streak of his career. He never even won back-to-back games doing that before. He's had only 1 touchdown in that stretch, which is the fewest in a 3-game span in his career. And he rested Week 18 against Seattle, so maybe he got the break he needed as he looks to improve on these numbers tonight, Trey.
Yeah, Stafford, for the most part, has been excellent this entire season. I mean, he's in year 16. He was the number 1 overall pick in 2009, right, and he's still out there going strong. And we talk so much about the Eagles and how well they've played since their bye week. If it weren't for the Eagles, we'd be talking about the Rams doing the same.
Yeah.
They had the same bye week, and since that bye week, they went 9-3 and were +8 in the turnover margin in that stretch. So we'll see how that carries over into tonight. For more on the game tonight and how we expect it to be wagered on, let's go out to the DraftKings trading floor where we find VSiN's Stormy Bonatoni. Stormy, obviously this is considered a home game for the Rams, but it's played on a neutral site. How has that impacted how people are looking at this game if they want to put a little money down?
Yeah, Trey and Claudia did a great job kind of detailing where this number has gone from the look ahead and opener to where we sit now at 2.5 points. But at least in the short term where we saw the announcement come through of that neutral site change, the Vikings were sitting as a 1.5 point favorite. They were pretty steadily for a while. And then as soon as that was announced officially that they were moving to start State Farm Stadium, we sat at the 2.5, where it has been pretty steady ever since. And the percentages do tell a pretty interesting story with how things moved, because even prior to that shift of location, we saw the Vikings getting about 62% or so of the tickets coming in on this game, but only 42% of the money. Post that change, that 45% went all the way up to now 72%. So everybody, it appears, largely from a public perception, coming in on Minnesota in this game. I didn't bet the 2.5 one way or the other, but I do like the Rams as a 6-point teaser play today, whether you already found a dance partner earlier this week or you're looking ahead. Bringing that 2.5 up to 8.5 does feel pretty fair, considering this is a game that we largely consider to be a close one.
I may or may not have done that teaser with the Bills. I didn't need it for the Bills, but maybe I'll need it for tonight's Stormy. Great minds think alike. Of course, we have that Week 8 matchup to look back on, but I want to look at Stafford over the last 3 starts. I just laid out some of the numbers. Just 1 touchdown in that stretch, just 1 interception, coming off completing just 53% of his passes. How confident are bettors right now in Stafford's game?
Yeah, despite old boy having a rough December, bettors still very confident in Matthew Stafford coming into this game for a lot of the reasons that you laid out about the Rams' success that they have had this back end of the season. And it's interesting, there's a handful of other reasons within this, right? You talk about the postseason experience. It's the healthiest complement of weapons that he's had really all season. This is a Vikings defense that's a bit of a pass funnel, forces more passing opportunities. And Stafford, because of those struggles over the last 3 weeks, has presented a little bit of a buy low opportunity in the market. For example, his over or under 1.5 passing touchdowns today, just juiced at -120, despite 99% of the money coming in on that prop being toward the over. His passing yards prop is 20 yards fewer than what we're seeing from Sam Darnold today, and that's despite his number being bet up and Darnold's being bet down. The pass attempts, the completions number, all being bet pretty much toward the over on Matthew Stafford today.
All right, Stormy, let's flip it over to the other quarterback. Sam Darnold was a top 3 pick in 2018. This is his first playoff start. For 16 of the 17 games this season, he played great, and then he fell flat in that season finale in Detroit with the division on the line. How are people looking at wagering him going into his first postseason appearance?
I absolutely love the way you laid that out, Trey, because it is a little bit of a conflict for some bettors when you look at the percentages with this stuff. Because, for example, let's go to the passing yards, where we see the majority of the tickets on his yardage today are to the under. And we saw it bet down 4-5 yards below what it initially opened at. And that feels like a little bit of recency and confirmation bias for a lot of people who look at Sam Darnold and say, about time he turned into a pumpkin. He's not actually as good as he's shown all season long. This is the real Sam Darnold. And then you see the money that is coming in, bulk on the over of that prop. And it's because, no, actually, let's look at the larger sample size that we've seen from Sam Darnold all season long. Maybe this actually is who he is with Kevin O'Connell as his head coach. I think that the passing touchdowns tell a little bit better of that story, that the over 1.5 passing touchdowns compared to Matthew Stafford, we just talked about being -120. It's -185 for Sam Darnold to go over that number. From November 17th leading up to that game against Detroit, he had 18 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions, 280 yards on average per game. He was playing awesome. And so I think there is a good chunk of people that thinks he gets back to that today.
Stormy, be careful. You can't let Trey's head get too big. Don't tell him his questions are that good. Let's talk about unders.
No help. I get no help from my partner.
They've gone 4-1 so far in the wild card round. We're seeing the total around 47 in the hook. Of course, the neutral site changes things a bit. What does the action look like so far on the total?
Well, it's funny because the total hasn't really moved much, right? And sometimes no movement can tell you just as good a story as when the line does shift. And we've sat pretty much there at that 47.5, 68% of the bets, 76% of the money, though, are coming in on the over. And so whenever that happens and you see all of this public sentiment apparently on the over, but that number hasn't moved to 48, to 48.5, you wonder why. It's like somebody knows something that we don't know. Clearly the book is staying at that number for a reason. You mentioned 4-1 to the under so far in these 5 wildcard games, also 2-0 to the under on games set at 47 or higher. Didn't have a play on the total in this game for me, one way or the other, but the bet splits certainly are interesting.
All right, Stormy, thanks very much. We appreciate all your hard work and the information on this game. Time is money. Time heals all wounds. Time waits for no man. Time, time, time. It may also be the reason Sam Darnold has had such a successful season, and it might be the key on the Vikings pulling off the upset. We'll break it all down next, and why time may be on his side. Those are all the time song references we could find. Well, as we continue on the pregame power-up, what a renaissance season it's been for Sam Darnold. The former Jets, Panthers, and Niners QB finally unlocked his potential on his fourth team with Kevin O'Connell and the Minnesota Vikings, having Justin Jefferson help. Darnold finished this season fifth in passing yards and passing touchdowns, setting new career highs in both of those categories. He had 12 games this season with 2 or more touchdown throws and a passer rating of over 100, and yes, that was the most in the NFL of those 2 categories this season. And Sam's surprise season led the Vikings to a surprise season, at least according to the odds makers. Minnesota blew past their win total, which was set at 6.5 this offseason, becoming the first team since the 2015 Panthers to finish at least 5.5 games, or 6.5 games rather, above their preseason total. And remember, the Carolina Panthers went to the Super Bowl that year. Overall, they're the fifth team to accomplish this since 2002. None of the other 4 won the Super Bowl. Only those Panthers, as I said, made it there, and 2 of them lost in the wild card round. But as for Sam, his first playoff start has been a long time coming, and he is going to enjoy it all.
You know, obviously this is the time when, you know, people that, you know, whether, you know, guys are in the league for a long time, whether they've been with the same team for a long time, whether they're going, you know, bouncing around the league, you know, it's kind of, you know, where legacies, I guess, are made in the playoffs, not just winning games, but winning, you know, those later games like AFC, NFC championships, winning Super Bowls. Like that's how you're going to be remembered at the end of the day. You know, looking 50 years down the line, that's what people are going to remember.
More perspective now on Darnold's season. His 35 touchdowns are the 4th most by a player in their first season with a new team. His opponent tonight is at the top of that list as Matthew Stafford threw for 41, and then you see a couple of familiar names you might see or expect to see on the list. Tom Brady with 40 with the Bucs in 2020, and then Peyton Manning his first year with the Broncos after missing all of 2011 threw for 37. And of course, that's a pretty good list, Claudia.
Let's take a next-gen look at what has made Sam Darnold so successful this season. And the theme is time. Now, of course, he has had 7 seasons to develop, but really the time he's had in the pocket, the third longest time to throw, 3.08 seconds while attempting over 73% of his passes after 2.5 seconds this season. That's the highest rate in the NFL. Even more impressive, though, he's averaging 2.99 seconds in the pocket, the longest in the league and the longest by a quarterback in the next-gen stats era going back to 2016. So it may be difficult for the Rams to get pressure on Darnold, but they're definitely going to try. And they're going to do that with 2 standout rookies. Jared Verse leading the way, generating 76 pressures this season, the second most by a rookie since 2018. And you see Nick Bosa there, pretty good company to have. Verse and Braden Fisk combined for 120 pressures, the most by a rookie teammate duo since 2018. Now, the one guy that Sam Darnold looks for in his safety blanket is Justin Jefferson. Sam Darnold has targeted Jefferson 41 times when under pressure this season, the most by any quarterback wide receiver duo in the NFL. Connecting for over 400 yards, also the most in the league, so we can probably expect a lot of that connection tonight. And Darnold may have lost that Week 8 matchup with the Rams, but it was one of his most efficient games of the season. He threw for 240 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Good for a passer rating of 128.8, which is the second highest of his career and his highest in a loss trade.
All right, but Claudia, let's take a look now on the other side of the ball, the defensive side for these Minnesota Vikings. Brian Flores is notorious for being aggressive. His defense blitzed at the highest rate in the NFL this season. Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel combined for 23.5 sacks, and yes, I just love saying the name Van Ginkel. That is the second most by a teammate duo behind Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper for Denver. And remember, those two were part of the Broncos that led the league with 63 sacks. The Vikings generated the 3rd most quarterback pressures in the NFL and tied for the 4th most sacks in 2024 with 49. Now, when we use that as a backdrop, it's interesting to look at that Week 8 matchup because Minnesota blitzed Stafford on just 35% of his dropbacks, the 6th lowest in a game this season. And when they did that, Stafford made him pay. No pressure. He completed 16 of 22 passes for 148 yards and 4 touchdowns when not blitzed in that game, which makes you think they probably are going to try to bring more heat and get to him tonight because Stafford has not handled pressure well this season. Overall, he completed just 44.6% of his passes when pressured. That's the 7th lowest completion percentage in the NFL this regular season. He threw only 2 touchdowns, which is tied for the fewest among qualified quarterbacks. And Stafford's passer rating when pressured this season, yikes, just 55. The only quarterbacks who were worse, Anthony Richardson, who didn't complete 50% of his passes, Gardner Minshew, and Bo Nix. Stafford's rating jumps to 107.9 when he's got a clean pocket. Now, that's not surprising. Everybody plays well when you have a clean pocket, but it is somewhat surprising, as we said, to see those numbers from a guy who's seen almost everything in the league. Again, 16th season, it is sort of jarring to see those numbers drop, and you wonder how much of that was influenced by those first few games where he didn't have Puka and Cooper.
Certainly, and I think you're right on saying that the Vikings are going to adjust. And adjusting just means they're going to do what they've done to every other team. They're top 10 in pressure rate. They're number 1 in pass defense right now.
Throne.
Exactly. And Stafford has seen the pressure in other games. He's taken the 7th highest pressure rate right now of all quarterbacks. So I do certainly think that we'll see a lot of that. With all of that said, though, in that game, like you said, 4 touchdowns, they got it going on the ground. Play action, I think, is going to be huge for them. Number 1 in the league right now in play action.
And betting splits now we're looking at.
And we will look at those betting splits. Over here, 85% of the bets on Kupp. We're going to talk about him and Jefferson and what numbers we're seeing for them as far as props go. 49.5 receiving yards for Kupp. 91% of the handle on the over, 85% of the bets. We're seeing handle and bets on the Vikings to cover. Almost 80% of the handle on the over and a little bit less of the handle on the bets on the Vikings money line. For more in the action DraftKings is taking tonight, here's our anonymous sportsbook informant, Captain Book.
You don't have to have a true home field to host playoffs. You just need your A game, baby, from dusk till dawn. You don't need a quarterback to score touchdowns. You just hand to Aaron Jones or Williams on the ground. You got not to bet overs, baby, if you're chasing steam. You just can't hammer all the chalk for the same team. You don't have to be sharp to bet the Rams. You don't have to be cool to like the Vikes. Ain't no particular time better to take the spread. We just want your SGPs and your pets.
I loved that. Come on, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was something. It was an homage to Prince, if you didn't figure that out. Prince, of course, from Minneapolis, very famous there. And that was the song Kiss by Prince, part of the Under the Cherry Moon album. And, of course, Prince, we lost him in the great cull of 2016.
Yeah.
So many celebrities and singers, Tom Petty, Glenn Frey, David Bowie, all of them taken from us in 2016.
I'm surprised you didn't like that. Me and Marshall loved it.
I love Prince. I love Prince. I want to be clear. And my objection is because I love Prince. I mean, I respect the effort, but I like the way Prince did it a lot better. But hey, Captain Book, you do you. Let's do us and bring in the stud of the stockyards. You know him as well as Marshall Newhouse, longtime NFL player, 11 seasons in the league after his days at TCU. Okay, let's talk about home field advantage. And obviously that's been taken away because of what's going on around Los Angeles. But honestly, Marshall, I'm not sure that's going to affect this Rams team one way or the other. They were 5-4 at home, 5-3 away. You know, we always hear these stories about when the Niners come, the Rams at home have to work on a silent count. Is there anything lost by the Rams here from not having this home game?
Well, it's going to be hard to follow that blasphemy I heard. And
Thank you. Thank you.
All the litigation that they want against Captain Book. I apologize.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's not act like SoFi is this harrowing home field advantage. You know, half the stadium is usually visiting fans in that spaceship they call out there. But the Rams are 3-0 in playoff games since its inception. And on top of that, they're 7-1 in Arizona at State Farm Stadium. So I think the change of scenery, I don't think is going to be that big of a deal, that big of a departure from them playing at SoFi. They're an experienced team. Their core is experienced, and I think they'll bring that with them. They'll make their own energy.
And they said that they're taking the away team's locker room as well to stay with that familiarity. And I'm curious, actually, before I get to my question, does that matter much? Because on the media side, it's like, why wouldn't you just take the home locker room? How much does that really matter?
Listen, that depends on stadium to stadium. It could be something as small as sometimes the away locker rooms are a little bit more cramped. The way they're laid out truly is just weird. And so depending on how guys are comfortable with their pregame routines and getting in and out for warmups, that's a completely personal decision for the Rams. They must have something that they feel good about. Maybe it's a juju thing from being an away team, playing the Cardinals all those times and being 7-1. I wouldn't put it past football players to have a little superstition involved.
Well, the Rams did have that home field advantage back in Week 8. They won by 10, outgained them by over 100 yards. No sacks allowed, 3 sacks on the other side. We've talked about Stafford's numbers. As a player on the Rams team, what do you take away from that Week 8 win and try to replicate here, where the stakes are much higher?
Well, you guys talked about it. The Vikings were uncharacteristically low in pressure rate, which allowed Matt Stafford to really sit back there and carve you up, which he can do to anyone. I don't expect that trend to continue. They have a whole lot of wide receiver screens in their offense, but I imagine there's going to be a lot more pressure on Matthew Stafford to see how he kind of responds to that. I think also putting pressure on this offensive line unit. They've had some guys coming back from injury, young guys having to get more minutes. I like Steve Avila and Dotson at the guards, making space there on the interior, but there's going to be some pressure added from Brian Flores. They're going to really see how this Rams team has prepared. And then I think ultimately getting Kyron Williams going, the run game is such an important part. I think that gets lost in the Rams' offensive prowess, talking about the Cooper Kupps, the Staffords, and the Puka Nakuas. But their running game has always been a potent part of their attack. And so they have to get that going, at least to give the opposite team, something to really think about when they run these play-action shots from Matthew Stafford.
Marshall, if we're talking about defensive pressure being dialed up against Matthew Stafford, which didn't happen in Week 8, It's the pressure of the moment, I think, that a lot of people are curious about when it comes to Sam Darnold. As we said, it's his first playoff appearance. You know, Josh Allen's already won 6 postseason games, and he was in the same draft class. Lamar Jackson has been in a bunch and has won 3 postseason games. What are your expectations for Sam as he sort of understands and gets used to the gauntlet of playoff football for the first time?
I think you've seen some clips where he understands what's at stake for both the Vikings right now this year and his career. This is a career-defining game for Sam Darnold. Now, he's going to get paid handsomely, and he deserves it this offseason, whether that's in Minnesota or elsewhere. But whether he wins this game and how he performs in this game is completely indicative of how teams and the rest of the NFL is going to see him moving forward as just a stopgap kind of QB who you can be middle of the road with if things are perfect, or a guy who can bring you a little bit closer to your ultimate goal. And so he's got a lot to prove, and he hasn't played well as of late. But there's an incredible stat that the 4 games that Sam Darnold has played this year where his passer rating was below 100, the following games, he has combined over 700 yards, 68% completions, 7 total touchdowns, only 1 pick. So he is a guy who has learned how to respond. I give so much credit to Kevin O'Connell, but also Josh McNown, the QB coach, and Sam Darnold. He's really changed his game, but this is a career-defining moment for him.
Bounce back guy. We love that.
I was going to say, well, he has to after that performance against the Detroit Lions in Week 18. No real home field advantage, as we talked about here. We've seen this line move back down to 2.5. How confident are you in Darnold to bounce back and get that done with the cover?
Listen, I was a journeyman in my NFL days. I played a lot of games, started a lot of games, won a lot of games. I love seeing guys kind of come back and find their way. And I'm rooting for Sam Darnold. I think he gets it done tonight. It's going to be a really, really close game. There's going to be a lot of chess match going on from their first matchup where there was different guys who were healthy, different combinations of people on the field. But I think both squads are pretty healthy. Both squads are ready to go, and there's going to be a really incredible matchup between play callers and Kevin O'Connell and Sean McVay. But I like Sam Darnold in this moment. I think he's going to rise to the occasion.
All right, Marshall, appreciate you. We'll talk to you in a few more minutes. Coming up, just getting started here. Important public service announcement for the rest of the NFL. Emerson Latia been studying these 2 teams all week, and he's figured out exactly why they are so successful. Spoiler alert, it might have something to do with their talent. That's nice.
every day, people are trying to achieve being a top receiver in this league. So to be, all-pro for the 4th time of my fifth seasons here, it's a blessing for sure.
Yeah, you heard that right. Justin Jefferson, 4th time in his 5 seasons in the league, All-Pro. This season he ranked 6th in catches, 2nd in yards, and tied for 6th in receiving tutties. He led Minnesota in all of those categories and became the first player in NFL history to have over 100 receptions, 1,500 yards, and 10 touchdowns in 2 of his first 5 seasons. Now, why is that even more impressive? Only Marvin Harrison Sr. had more such seasons in his entire career. He did it 3 times in his entire career. Justin has done that twice in his first 5 seasons. Now, taking a look back at Jefferson in Week 8 against the Rams, the Vikings offense ran through him. He had 9 targets, 8 catches for 115 yards. The next closest receiver was actually running back Aaron Jones, who caught 2 balls for 37. Jefferson will be looking to bounce back after a quiet game versus Detroit, thanks in part to the struggles of Sam Darnold. In that regular season finale, he had just 3 catches and 54 yards, Claudia.
Well, with him on the field and Puka Nacua on the other side, we're getting 2 of the best in the league.
Correct!
Nacua returned to action in that Week 8 performance after missing time with a knee injury. He got 7 balls for 106 yards last time out these 2 faced. And remember, Nacua set a record for the most receiving yards by a rookie in a playoff game with 181 last year in this round against Detroit. That record was broken on Saturday by Ladd McConkey and his 197 yards in the Chargers' loss to the Texans. And this will be the first time in NFL history that the top 2 players in career receiving yards per game face off in the playoffs.
That's amazing.
It is.
I mean,
we
it's
get
ridiculous,
to see it.
yeah.
It's great. Justin Jefferson averaging 96.5 for his career, while Nacua is averaging 88.4. 2 players in the top 3 have only met once previously. That was in the 1990 divisional round when Jerry Rice's Niners met Gary Clark in Washington. San Fran won that game 28-10, and I was not born. So with all that said, Nacua and Jefferson should play important roles in tonight's game as they have all season. And for more on that, here's Emerson Latzia with an important public service announcement.
Getting a flashy quarterback could give your franchise a quick boost. However, without elite wide receivers, you could be left watching the playoffs from your couch. So come with me, Emerson Latzia, because hey, you could learn a lot from a dummy, as I help you catch knowledge about some of the best pass catchers in the NFL. We'll start here in New York. 4 years ago, Sam Darnold wins a total of 13 games in 3 seasons, playing with the likes of Robbie Chosen, Denzel Mims, and Quincy Enunwa. This is Sam Darnold today, winning 14 games this year alone in Minnesota, thanks in large part to playing with Justin Jefferson, a perennial All-Pro wide receiver. So just in case there's still anyone out there who doesn't know what it's like playing quarterback for the Jets, last time, this is Sam Darnold. This is the New York Jets. This is Sam Darnold on the Jets. Any questions? Now let's say you're an average NFL general manager. You had a tough day at the office. You come home, make yourself some dinner, draft Jalen Polk, pop in a movie, maybe draft Javon Baker. Sounds fun, right? Wrong. Don't draft wide receivers like the Patriots. Take guys like Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. So I know what you're thinking. The Rams started the season 1-4, but that was only half the battle. And it was fought without their top 2 stars on the outside. So let me show you something. Pretty neat, huh? So as we enter tonight's game, the Vikings might need to catch some of this knowledge to prepare for LA's second-year receiver, who is second in the league in catches and yards since Week 8, and averaging 90 yards per game, which is 3rd in the league, trailing only the aforementioned Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. So think about this. When you don't have good wide receivers, you're not giving yourself a chance to reach your full potential as a team or as a quarterback. So stop it. Get some help. Because DraftKings wants you to realize all the wonderful things you can be, and so do I.
Did you have any idea what that last one was?
I went 0 for 7, however many he just did it.
That's the Michael Jordan thing. Stop it. Get some help.
Yeah.
The other one was, this is your brain on drugs. But all of this doesn't matter to you because you weren't born.
It's not my fault when I was born.
No, it's not. It's just sad. It's just.
Not my fault. You're old.
No, I'm experienced. You know how it's like HBO Plus and Disney Plus?
Yeah.
I'm just 50 plus.
That's the rest, yeah.
Right now. What the hell else am I going to do? I'll tell you that much. You leave me alone, you child. Okay, let's go. We got our best game of the wild card weekend in the nightcap on Sunday between the Bucs and the Commanders, with Jaden Daniels in Washington claiming a 23-20 victory on a last-second bank shot shtoink by Zane Gonzalez. Zane Gonzalez shtoinked them into the divisional round, much in the same way Matt Wright shtoinked the Chiefs to win the division in that game against the Chargers. It was Washington's first playoff win in, let me get the number right, 6,945 days, and the fifth straight game they won that came down to the final play or a play in the last minute. Now, Jaden really impressed in his playoff debut, throwing for 268 yards and 2 touchdowns while adding 36 more yards on the ground, and became just the 4th rookie quarterback to win a postseason game on the road. He joined Russell Wilson in 2012, Mark Sanchez in 2009, and Joe Flacco in 2008 as the only others to do it. As for another fourth quarter comeback, Daniels credits that to the culture his head coach Dan Quinn has built.
That's just the brotherhood and that DQ. That DQ set, the brotherhood, the togetherness that we have within the locker room. Obviously, the people that have been around, that's been in the locker room, we can see how close we are off the field. And we're always hanging around each other. Everybody gets along with each other. So I think those moments, when times get tough, we fall back on those type of moments.
Jaden wrecking the Canadian tuxedo there.
It looks good, yeah, rocking it.
Respect. So odds up now for the division round. The Lions will go home as an 8.5-point favorite as they take on the Commanders. The Texans over a touchdown dog to the Chiefs. That's the game that starts divisional weekend on Saturday afternoon. The Ravens and Bills should be a classic. The Ravens 1.5 road favorites as it stands right now. And you go back and look at the way that game ended for the Bucs. Baker Mayfield had such a great season, and he's playing so well, but it was that botched exchange on the jet sweep with Jalen McMillan. He said that's going to stick around for a while. And it's the one flaw in Baker's game. He and Kirk Cousins tied the regular season for the most fumbles in the NFL with 13.
And that is tough for the season that Baker's had to have it just end on something like that. I will say, too, I talked with the odds makers at DraftKings. Right now, the Eagles would be a 3.5-point favorite against Minnesota and a 7-point favorite against the Rams.
Okay, we'll get into that a little bit later and everything else. Let's go back to Marshall Newhouse. Marshall, there have been a lot of people super impressed with what we've seen from Jaden Daniels, and they should be. But I want to make sure we're not prisoners of the moment here, okay? Because everything we're hearing and saying about Jaden Daniels right now, I'm pretty sure these same people said about C.J. Stroud a year ago, right? When he was lighting things up. And look, C.J. played great, and he's got him back and won a playoff game for the second straight year. But it didn't look the same in year 2 as it does in year 1. So let's not be prisoners of the moment. Let's put into some sort of real perspective what you thought you saw from Jaden and what he can be going forward.
Well, you saw a guy he's great between the ears. You could throw everything else out the window. His decision-making was beyond his rookie status. They put a lot on his plate. They go for it a ton. And they trust him to make good decisions. And that's just we always said about QBs as game managers as a negative. Being a game manager is the first step to being a starting great QB. And he does that in spades. And then you can add the running ability, the touch on his passes, and just the leadership. The guys seem to really like him. And we haven't seen a rookie quarterback have this kind of year since RG3. And you can kind of compare he and RG3 apples to apples, in my opinion, because they play for the same franchise. And I think having gotten them to the playoffs and won a playoff game now, he stands as one of the best, if not the best, rookie QB season ever. And he's doing it in a system that feels like it's replicable, like it's something you can do over and over again, given the pieces are there, and he's the same guy who keeps growing.
Let's stick with that topic of winning. Eagles got the dub over the Packers, but it wasn't as pretty. Not as many nice things to say about Jalen Hurts, not his best game. A lot of things happening in this one. A.J. Brown on the sideline reading a book, Marshall.
Which is now #1 on Amazon bestseller list.
Which Trey told me, which I'm really not that surprised, doing this because he had just one pass for 10 yards. Can I first ask you, have you ever seen something like this? A player, whether he had a good or bad game, going to the bench and reading a book?
Haven't seen that. You're seeing all the different kind of tobacco products and gum and seeds and whatnot. Never seen a book, but I guess it's good. He's not like reading Ayn Rand or something. He's reading a leadership book. And yeah, if he's been doing it weekly, and this is something that's not just out of the blue and nothing passive aggressive, I don't see the big deal about it.
I mentioned the lines for the Eagles and the face, of course, whoever wins tonight. How concerned should these Phillies players and Phillies fans be after that performance? Although it was a win, not a pretty win.
A little bit, but not too much. Listen, we knew that there would be a level of rust from Jalen Hurts. And sometimes rust could be more than just accuracy. It could be rust between the ears. We talk about mentality all the time. But ultimately, the defense is playing at an elite level. The Kobe Dean injury is huge. They're going to miss him. But the defense, if they keep playing at this level, ultimately, if they keep the game close, you get the ball to 11, you get the ball to 26, you get the ball to 6, and you call it a day. And the Eagles can match up with anybody.
I did not see an Ayn Rand reference from Marshall Newhouse in the rundown, but I respect the hell out of it. I do. All right, let's talk about the AFC showdown that I think we're all looking forward to in the divisional round. It's Lamar, it's Josh, it's the Bills, and the Ravens. They met earlier this year, and the Ravens worked them over. Josh did not play well in that game. I think he was 16 of 30, and Derrick Henry did whatever he wanted to do. What are your expectations going forward into the rematch in the postseason?
Yeah, it was crazy watching that 35-10 Ravens win and thinking it feels inevitable they're going to meet again. So I think this is going to be a barn burner. And you've got, your two top MVP candidates going toe-to-toe. Listen, Josh Allen is trying to avoid going his 4th straight divisional round loss. Lamar Jackson is trying to avoid going 0-3 versus Allen and Mahomes. These guys have a ton on the line. Their teams around them are better than they've ever been. It's set up to be one of the all-time great playoff games. And then, what's your gift? You got to go to Kansas City and most likely play Pat Mahomes. But both these guys understand what's at stake, and it'll say a lot about both of their legacies ongoing, despite how great they've been so far.
I want to shift gears to some non-playoff news. We talked about Mike Vrabel to the Patriots yesterday. Today we get the news that the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy are parting ways. They couldn't agree on a new contract. What do you think of the breakup, and what do you think of the Bears and Saints being interested? Where do you think is the best fit for him?
Well, we could first talk about just the Cowboys and it's the way that they continue to do business, putting their foot up their own rear end. Seems like as anatomically weird as that seems, they waited longer than this period to interview outgoing coordinators who are in the playoffs, and so they missed their chance to gather due diligence information on Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn and other coordinators and other coaches to then have this dispute with Mike McCarthy on what seems like the length of the contract that he wanted. And so, listen, it's not like you're going to miss Mike McCarthy. He is who he is. I appreciate him as a coach, but they were stable, and that's a good enough thing. But now you lose that stability, and then you lose out on what could be 3 to 4 weeks of not interviewing and figuring out your next coaching hire until those guys are free to interview again. It seems weird. I think also Mike McCarthy, listen, if you're going to the Saints, it's a rebuild. Yeah. You're cap strained, you're cutting veterans. So if you're in it for a long haul, that's more power to you. The Chicago Bears is the better job, but there's a lot of history in that division, and that's not the easiest decision for Mike McCarthy to go to Chicago, despite how much of a business we all sign up for this to be.
All right, Jerry's going to Jerry. 20 seconds really quickly here, Marshall. Any concern about the layoff and all the rest or rust for the Chiefs? Haven't really played since Christmas Day.
I think it'll take them about half a quarter. There'll be a couple balls in the dirt from Pat, and they'll figure things out. They've got the history to do this. They've done this already. I don't see a big problem.
Yeah, 29-5, Andy Reid's record as a head coach with a bye week, best in the history of the NFL.
I'm sick of it, man. I'm sick of it. Marshall, thank you. Each day of the NFL playoffs, DraftKings is crowning the king of the end zone. Who will it be tonight? We'll break it down when we come back on the Pregame PowerUp. We're back here on the pregame power-up, as
there's an
is Next Gen Cat. He's back for the, thanks, Cat.
Claudia.
First touchdown scorer, who we got? Jefferson Nakua, he's going towards Jefferson?
No.
Willie.
No,
he did go Jefferson. He tried to
Jefferson.
trick us.
Cat the
What a
pump
smart
fake.
cat. Let's take a look at how the humans are betting the anytime touchdown market. Justin Jefferson getting lots of love. Kyron Williams, though, juiced even more. Williams has scored at least one touchdown in 5 of his last 6 games. We see Aaron Jones up there at plus 125. He's had at least one touchdown in each of his last 5 Monday appearances. And Kupp has scored at least one touchdown in 4 of the Rams' last 5 postseason games. For more ways that you can bet tonight's game, here's DKN social media correspondent Megan Townsley.
Here's the deal. We're rounding out NFL wildcard weekend with the Rams versus the Vikings, and in the DraftKings Sportsbook betting groups, it's all about anytime touchdown scores. That's because the DraftKings Sportsbook has an insane promo called King of the End Zone, where you get to choose who you think will have the longest touchdown score tonight for a share of $2 million in bonus bets. Hank Lockwood from the Pardon My Take podcast opted in today, and he's rolling with Johnny Munt. Yes, Johnny Munt, the tight end from the Minnesota Vikings, to hit pay dirt. Now, I did say you can choose anyone for this promo. Chris Clemmer, also from Barstool, is rolling with Justin Jefferson as an anytime touchdown scorer. Maybe a little bit more likely there, but still fun nonetheless. Now, if you want to find these betting groups, all you have to do is open up the DraftKings Sportsbook, click on the social tab at the top, and then hit betting groups. And for the King of the End Zone promo, it's so easy as well. Just go to the promotions page and then select the token to opt in, and then just place a bet on any touchdown market today. I know who I think is going to score the longest touchdown, but I love seeing other options in these betting groups, so go check them out and place your bets before the game kicks off tonight.
Well, if you're going to say that, you got to tell us
I was
who it
waiting
is.
for it.
Megan, give it up. Come on. All right. You know how we do. We have such a tightly packed 60-minute show. We don't get everything in, so we let it all hang out in the last segment called the data dump. And here we go. Vikings took a tough loss to the Lions in Week 18, but history shows that might not be a cause for concern. Why? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Over the last 20 years, 4 teams have had a 7 or more game straight-up winning streak snapped right before a playoff game, as the Vikings did on Sunday Night Football against the Lions last week. Those 4 teams went 4-0 straight up after their streak got snapped, Claudia.
Also good news for the Vikings. With a spread of less than a field goal, that might be right where Minnesota wants LA. Under Kevin O'Connell in the regular season, Minnesota is 26-9 straight up. That's 74% cover rate in one-score games. In 2024, the Vikings are 9-1 straight up in those close games, Trey.
All right, and if this one is a close one in the second half, that could be a problemo for Stafford and LA. Since the start of 2022, the Rams quarterback is 15-25-1 against the second half spread. That's the worst mark in the NFL. And when Stafford has a lead, he's 0-5 on the second half spread and 2-15 over the last 3 seasons in that spot.
And you can bet that at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Here's what else we missed. Each of the Vikings' last 7 Monday games have gone under the total points line. The Rams have failed to cover the spread in each of their last 4 Monday games. And Matthew Stafford has thrown at least 1 interception in each of his last 5 appearances against the Vikings. Something else you can also bet at the DraftKings Sportsbook.
Okay, just so people understand some information we are getting in as we get set for this game. The ticket sales for this, broken down. Basically, 54% of the people expected to show up at Glendale in this game are Minnesota Vikings fans, 46 Rams fans. Now, that kind of sounds like a regular home game for the Rams because, you know, the ongoing story is that it's whether it's the Chargers or the Rams at SoFi, there really isn't a home field advantage. So it's going to be something that I think both teams are probably very familiar with.
Yeah, it's kind of all sports in LA too. When I lived out there for a bit, I'm like, you guys have great sport out here.
Outside
Nobody
of the
seems
Lakers.
to really care.
Outside
of the Lakers.
The Lakers are a different dynamic, so we'll see what happens. Again, enjoy the game, and again, for those all affected by the California fires, maybe this will give you a little bit of comfort and joy in everything else you're going through. For Claudia, Emerson, Stormy, and everybody else, I'm Trey Wingo. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next Sunday with a divisional round preview show of the Pregame PowerUp, 11 o'clock Eastern, getting you set for what should be one of the best weekends of the entire year. Thanks for watching, and enjoy the game today.